Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look back at the week that was in the nation's capital through the lens of this second Trump administration. And joining me once again this week is Dan Andros. He is the host of CBN's Quick Start podcast. Dan, we had a busy week again this week, and I don't know that we're ever going to not have a busy week moving forward on this show.
No, there is never a shortage of new policies, new headlines. It's a fire hose of info, and so we're doing our best to get through it.
Yeah, and I think we should start off today with a departure from the Trump administration, although it's sounding more like a soft departure. The president and Elon Musk will be holding a press conference at the White House today, where it's believed that Elon Musk will be announcing that he's officially leaving his position at the White House as a senior counselor to the president. Now, President Trump himself on social media hinted that this is what the speech was, the press conference was going to be about. But he also did say that Musk wasn't going away necessarily, that, he would still be involved and still be advising the president. But it sounds as though, Dan, like his role is going to fade more into kind of a background a counselor to the president. And there's some speculation. Why is he leaving? I mean, certainly we've seen what's happened with some of the Tesla stock numbers. His popularity in the United States over the last year has plummeted. And Musk himself, it sounds as though maybe there's some disagreement between him and the president and what the president wants to do specifically with the big, beautiful bill. Musk on social media, on X, announced that he was disappointed with the big, beautiful bill, that it was actually going to add about $3.8 trillion to the debt, using his number there. Dan, Musk only spent 4 months in the administration. It seems, I think it feels to people like it was a lot longer as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge. Yeah. What is his legacy on Trump 2.0?
It's interesting because I mean, who knows? I don't know Elon Musk, but it sure seems like this is a guy who's building rockets. I mean, he's doing incredible things, right? And I would imagine that wading into bureaucracy, while maybe it was like a pet peeve sort of issue of his, I don't know that it's the place that he wanted to be for long term. I mean, I think they said at the beginning of the outset here that this wasn't going to be a long-term thing. So I don't know what the exact timetable they put forward was behind the scenes, but it's not entirely surprising that he's taken a step back here. But I think the legacy is he really put his hat into the ring for President Trump at a time when perhaps the polling was very close, and who knew what was going to happen, whether it was Biden or even Kamala Harris. The average, we always looked at the Real Clear Politics average, they were neck and neck. And so it was very uncertain what was going to happen. And then Elon, I think he surprised a lot of people by throwing his hat into the ring for President Trump. Then that led to a couple other big names, Joe Rogan, et cetera. And I think that was what ended up turning the election or helping at least turn the election for President Trump. You had a lot of people who were fans of Elon Musk. You had a lot of young people, a lot of young men. Same with Joe Rogan. And so I think his legacy is going to be really giving President Trump there a boost during the campaign to get into the White House. And then the second part of that is starting this journey of trying to cut government waste. And who knows the exact reasoning? Maybe we'll read about it in a book next year or in a couple of years as to why he officially left now. But I don't know that it's entirely surprising that he's leaving, because I think, like I said, that it was kind of planned to be short-termish all along. And we'll see if the advising role stays on. But knowing what I know publicly just about Elon Musk, it seems like bureaucracy and waiting around in there is not exactly the thing that's going to float his boat long term.
Right, and I think you're right, and I think the legacy of Elon goes back before the start of this Trump administration, because as you mentioned, it was kind of late in the campaign. It might have even been after Kamala Harris was the nominee. I don't remember much about Elon Musk when it was Biden versus Trump, because I think it felt like Trump had a firm handle on that election if it was going to be Trump versus Biden. And once it was Kamala Harris, you started to see Musk get more involved, more outspoken on X. And the money that he poured into the Trump campaign certainly had an effect and an impact there. So it's fair to wonder, does Trump win the White House without Elon Musk's support during the campaign? I don't know that he does. I mean, it's possible he still does, but I think the Musk legacy, as much as we'll remember him for Doge, the actual impact that he had may have been more so in the months leading up to the election, and his ability to kind of get on his social media platform and inform or shape the debate, shape the information, sometimes factually, sometimes not in a factual way, to help get President Trump over the finish line. And that money kept coming in. It was an enormous amount of money for one single donor to give a presidential candidate.
Yeah, and not only that, but remember, he bought X or Twitter and turned it into X. So he had a massive megaphone, and I mean, he's got one of the probably highest engaged accounts on X. So here you have a guy that's able to message, and he's good at online banter, right? He doesn't just put up generic stuff that's obviously sifted through, a marketing team or whatever. I mean, he's funny. He puts memes up there. I mean, that's the sort of thing that's going to resonate more with young people. So you had that, not only the money, but then also the messaging behind it. And obviously a very smart guy as well. And so, yeah, huge impact on that campaign. And it would be interesting to go back because, yeah, I forget, too, the exact timing of when he came in off the top of my head. But it definitely was later in the game. And it definitely helped surge Trump to the victory.
And during this show, we've kind of talked about how Musk's influence has ebbed and flowed in this Trump administration. Remember, early in the presidency, people were making the joke President Musk, you know, as opposed to President Trump. And that waned. I think there was a recognition by some in the White House and some senior Trump advisors that Elon Musk was getting too much press. He had too much power, that the cabinet officials started to take some of that power away, and started to kind of limit his, I guess maybe limit what he was saying that he was doing. Whether or not he was actually making those decisions with Doge early on is kind of up in the air. We still really don't know exactly who was calling the shots in the first couple months of Doge. But speaking of Doge, Musk said he was going to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget during the campaign. That was the promise. That was what he was going to do. He was going to get in there and he was just going to take $2 trillion from the federal deficit. Doge now themselves say that they have saved $175 billion with all the cuts to the federal workforce. Certainly, that's, if that number is accurate, that's a lot of money. But again, a drop in the bucket to the overall deficit, and far short of the $2 trillion that Musk was promising. Nat Malkus, who's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, told CNN, "We expect the government to show receipts, and the receipts that Doge has shown that are posted publicly are woefully inadequate to back their claims." So it's not even clear that it's $175 billion that Doge has managed to trim or take away from the federal deficit. So, Dan, I know Doge is still in existence. It's still doing some work, although it's much quieter now. We don't know exactly what it is they're up to, if they're doing anything at this moment. But did they accomplish their goals? I guess, first of all, I guess the first question is it over? Like, are they still working? We don't really know. And if they're not, if Doge has kind of waned with Elon Musk now out, did Doge accomplish what it set out to do? Was the turmoil and the uncertainty worth it? And like, the easiest way to ask this, was the juice worth the squeeze? In other words, with all the upheaval with federal workers and the uncertainty that came with all of the turnover and the layoffs and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it'd be interesting because I don't know what their goals were behind closed doors. If it was just the money number, well, they're not there yet because you can't. I mean, this is the federal government of the United States with $30+ trillion in debt. You're not turning that around in 4 months, right? Like that's just not happening. So not there yet. I mean, I think they did accomplish a changing of the narrative when it comes to just assuming status quo in the government. I think having serious conversations about the bloated departments we have in our government and what they're actually doing, I think is long overdue. Yeah. I mean, these departments have to run more efficiently. I mean, I don't think there's a soul in America that would disagree with that statement. And if it took a guy like Elon Musk throwing memes out there all the time to start having these conversations and make people seriously consider, well, what if we just severely cut back or eliminated the Department of Education? Would anything change? I mean, our education numbers are going down. Like, is it worth spending all these billions of dollars? So I think those conversations are definitely conversations that need to be had. Now, if that's the legacy and then we just go back to bureaucracy as it was before, well, then no, it didn't accomplish its goal. But if they've set up a department there that will be able to rein in government spending, well, then yes, it'd be great. But I mean, all of that is TBD because it's only been 4 months. I mean,
right.
You get the ball rolling on that, but obviously a long way to go.
Right. And from where I sit, I think the issue with Doge initially was that they were going so fast that it felt reckless. And even if we don't know exactly, was it reckless? Was it not reckless? We're kind of waiting a lot of these different things out with USAID, with public broadcasting, with the different areas where there have been lots of cuts, where there certainly there is bloat in the government. We all know that there's bloat in the government. And like you said, every American, Republican, Democrat, Independent, understands that the federal government absolutely could work more efficiently. And I think the question about Doge early on was, were they taking the time that they needed to do it carefully, to do it right? It felt early on like Elon Musk at the APAC, not APAC, was it yeah, maybe it's at the CPAC. Sorry, it's CPAC.
Right, yeah.
We had like the chainsaw that he was kind of waving around, right? It was almost like a visual of how it felt to many what Doge was doing, even if the end results may come out to be correct. So a lot of it to me was messaging. A lot of it to me was appearance. And with something like making the government more efficient, you can't make those kinds of things happen in 1 month. It doesn't seem to me. I mean, even if you're kind of planning, you got to get in there and you got to see what's going on and do it in a careful and responsible way. And I don't, maybe that's what happened. It didn't feel that way in real time. And so that's kind of why, to me, I'm still not exactly sure what was accomplished with Doge and whether they met their goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see. Like they were saying, bring the receipts. What did you actually do? Show us, because you're right. Like, there's two components to this. There's the messaging component, and I think that is an important side of it. And I think with Trump, I mean, we all know with the nicknames and everything else, like, he's a genius at coming up with that stuff. And Musk is sort of in his own way as well. But you have to show actual results on this, right? So the messaging is important in one way, in that you want to get the American public on board with sort of and comfortable with, okay, we can cut stuff. We can do this. Like, yes, like, let's actually go after the bureaucracy here and make some damage, make a dent in this thing. So that's important on the other side, but you got to have some actual results to it. And again, I don't know how much power they had. All they could do is it's like the CDC of budgeting, right? Like, it's, hey, we'll make a recommendation and everyone's either going to ignore it or maybe they'll think about it. So,
right. And that's what I was going to say. Like, I think too, that's, well, yeah, I go ahead. I totally lost what I was going to say there.
No. I mean, I just think it's like, it's how much power do you actually have?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so maybe the narrative part of it was all they were kind of left with.
Right. And sorry, that's what I was going to say. Like, I think once the cabinet officials started taking control over, what the actual cuts were going to be, it seemed to me things slowed down once cabinet officials felt like that they were having decisions taken away from them, which makes me think Doge was doing a lot of things on their own at first, without kind of going around the cabinet officials. And then remember, in the first month, a lot of the cabinet officials who are in place now had not been confirmed yet. Some of them had not. And so it's possible that a lot of this got slowed down and Musk's role started to decrease, where he can make this exit now because cabinet officials decided they wanted to take control of their own departments, which is, if you're a cabinet official, you don't want to cede that control over to an unaccountable commission that's been established by a billionaire who may not share your interests, So I think that's where things stand. We'll kind of see what the relationship is with Elon Musk and the Trump administration moving forward. He'll certainly try to continue to exert influence on X and act as a counselor to the president from afar. But it certainly sounds like his days in the cabinet meetings have come to an end. But we'll wait and see. Want to talk a little bit more, Dan, about tariffs. Big legal battles, a lot of back and forth this week in the courtrooms over tariffs. Maybe not in the courtrooms. A lot of this is done in judges' chambers and in these groups of judges that are looking at what Trump has been doing with the Liberation Day tariffs. This week, a panel of 3 judges ruled that the emergency act that Trump has used as justification for the Liberation Day tariffs was used inappropriately, and that therefore a lot of those tariffs were illegal. So what they did was block those tariffs from continuing. Now, that only lasted for a few hours because after the White House challenged that ruling in court, a federal appeals court stayed that other court's ruling, that 3-judge panel's decision, meaning that the tariffs can continue to remain in effect as this all proceeds throughout the legal system. Now, the White House says these tariffs are lawful, but that even if the courts do rule against them, they're going to find another way to keep these tariffs in place. But Dan, I think the big question that kind of we're asking, and that I know a lot of foreign leaders are asking, does this legal battle, this back and forth, and the uncertainty over the future of the tariffs, does it make it more difficult for the White House to negotiate all of these deals that they say that they are negotiating with some of these trade partners?
Yeah, I mean, it might slow it down a little bit because obviously there's some uncertainty and then they might wait for these court hearings to come out. But if there's, I mean, like this appeals court comes in and holds it, so they stay in place for now. I mean, I think they would probably have to just keep negotiating until the ruling actually comes. Because otherwise, if they stay in place and he just puts these things on a tariff, slaps a high tariff on you, well, you're stuck with it until this court ruling comes in. And so, I mean, the interesting thing to me here is I think it brings up a conversation about how much of these sort of executive actions are worth doing, because they can easily be undone the minute an opposing administration takes office. You know, if Democrats get in there in 2028, or even if it's not until the next time, then if these are all just bound by executive actions or, you know, executive order, then they can easily be taken away. And if Trump really wants these tariffs in there long term, then the best thing he should do is go through Congress and try to get this done. And I know that's the harder route to go. Maybe he doesn't want to go that way. But I do think if he wants some of these things to stick around, particularly the tariff one, right? Because the argument's always been, hey, this is a long-term play to get production back into America and not be producing all these things over in sweat factories in China. And so if that's the long-term goal, I would think you'd want to make sure that this stays in long-term. Obviously, it's much harder to undo something that gets through Congress. So
yeah,
obviously a hard lift, but because otherwise what happens if these tariffs are put in and then it gets changed in a future administration, well, we just paid all these taxes on things and got nothing out of it. So,
right.
So yeah, I think we'll see how they decide. And to me, this is interesting because, you know, it's not completely unique. I mean, just in recent history, that of course went after sort of Biden's vaccine mandate, and then in the first Trump administration, the travel ban. So this sort of thing happens. We'll see if it ends up in the Supreme Court. But like you said, it's on that National Emergencies Act. That's what they're saying, not if tariffs are good or bad, but was this applied correctly?
Well, and the Trump administration has said they would have sought emergency relief from the Supreme Court if the federal appeals court didn't rule the way they did on Thursday. So it looked like they were going to try and get it to the Supreme Court. So it sounds like it's heading there. And when that would be, probably not on an emergency basis, but it's probably going to make its way up through the different levels, and it'll get to the Supreme Court probably at some point in the next term. We'll see. But you mentioned the fact that Congress could codify these tariffs, and that you have Republican control in the Senate, you have Republican control in the House. Now, this is really the time to try and do it. But the fact that he's not tells me that it may not have enough support, even among the Republicans in both of those chambers, because traditionally tariffs have not been a conservative bullet point. You know, this isn't something that conservatives have traditionally wanted to embrace. And so there may not be the kind of love for tariffs. Even that, you hear some Republicans certainly in the Senate and the House touting them and talking about them, but as a good thing and the way to move forward. But I think you're hitting on the point with all of this, and that is that what are the tariffs? Are they in and of themselves good and necessary to change the way our economy works in the United States, to produce more here in the US, to reduce the trade deficit between these two countries, but also to revitalize American production so that we're not relying on China for phone parts and all these different kinds of things? If that's the case, then the Trump administration should just be saying, the tariffs are here. This is where they're going to be for as long as I'm in power. We'll negotiate trade deals, but this is what we need to reshape the American economy. But it sounds to me more like they're being used kind of as a stick to get to change trade deals around the world. In which case, like you said, we might be paying higher taxes, higher cost on goods, on foreign goods here in the U.S. for a year, 2 years, 3 years to get these trade deals together. But to what end? Like it's not going to actually do the things that the Trump administration said they wanted the tariffs to do initially. And I think that's where there's some a lack of synchronicity with what the Trump administration is arguing here.
Or clarity, and I think you're right, by the way, on the hunch that maybe not going through Congress because well, this is the time to do it, right? Obama with Obamacare jammed that thing through when he had a supermajority in the House and the Senate. So this would be the time for Trump to do that, but he's not right now. And like you said, this is not traditionally something that conservatives are in favor of. And it's essentially a tax. And so when you say, okay, 30%, we land on 30% for China. Well, what happens in that? What is the outflow of that? Well, what that means is when we import something, from China, there's a 30% tax on it. American businesses have to pay that tax. And that's why President Trump was saying, well, Walmart should just eat that tax, right? Like just go ahead and you guys don't pass it on to the consumer. But that's not what companies do, right? No responsible company is going to look at what something costs to bring in and then just eat the costs and take less profit. That makes no sense for them. So American consumers end up footing that bill. And so when you see like, oh, gross receipts are in from the tariffs, well, that's just us paying more for things. That's all that is. That's us paying more taxes. And so like you said, that is not traditionally conservative. And I think for the long-term play, John, this is to me the real problem with this strategy for a conservative, from a conservative point of view, is that the end goal is, hey, we have to get Americans producing things. Well, why are we going to China in the first place? Why are we going to India in the first place? Because it's too expensive to make things here, in large part because of different unions and things that make it just very expensive to make things here in America. It's difficult to do. So even if you succeed and make it so expensive to import something from China to where it's less expensive to do it here in America, guess what? It's still more than we were paying before.
Right.
Yeah, it might have the Made in America label slapped on it, but you're still going to be paying a lot more than you were before because they were able to do it cheaply somewhere else. So instead of bringing the cost down, and maybe this would force unions into, but that's a whole secondary battle. How do you get unions then to like adopt to the market and become cheaper? Like it's just, you're talking about I'm not an economist, but it feels like that's something that would take decades to kind of turn around.
All right, well, let's move on to our last story here of the day, Dan, and that is a little segment I'm calling the Trump train. And I guess my main question is whether or not this is a fun story or is it serious and embarrassing? I can't really decide. I'm kind of curious what you think. Republican Congressman Greg Steube is introducing legislation to block federal funding for the Washington, D.C. Metro rail system unless it is renamed the Trump train. In order to receive this funding, the system would have to be renamed the Washington Metropolitan Authority for Greater Access, or WMAGA, of course, a play on Make America Great Again. The bill is probably has no chance of even passing the House if it comes up for a floor vote, which I think tells you about the seriousness of this particular move by Congressman Stubbe. But in addition to just speaking specifically about this idea of renaming WMATA, which is what it currently is right now, the Metro Rail system WMAGA here in Washington D.C., and calling it the Trump train. This is one of a number of different ways some members, Republican members of the House, have sought to kind of, I think, curry Trump's favor with different pieces of legislation. Lawmakers have proposed bills to rename Dulles Airport after Trump, to put him on the $100 bill, and also to allow him to run for a third term in office. Again, most of these items, it doesn't seem to me, have any real chance of even passing the House, which is certainly a more decidedly pro-Trump chamber than maybe the Senate is, although both, again, controlled by Republicans. So these different things that we're seeing these members of Congress do, are they worth a chuckle? Like, is this kind of a lighthearted thing? Is it something to just kind of be, oh, that's cute, oh, that's funny, or is this something we should take seriously? Like, is this something that Congressman Stubbe should kind of be embarrassed about? Does it make him look unserious as a legislator, or is this just something all in fun and I'm a late 40s curmudgeon?
I don't know why. I don't know why Stubbe's doing this. I don't know the motivation, if he's just trying to curry favor and give Trump a chuckle and have him be return some favor at some point down the line. I mean, at best, this feels like just a funny troll to me, just making people in the DC area think about having to ride the Trump train every time they get into work. I mean, it's just,
yes,
it's a funny troll. And anytime, but Trump is serious about branding though. So like I mean, look, if he's trying to curry favor, he's doing it the right way, because Trump loves nothing more than to brand something Trump. I mean, if he could, there would be, gold and brass all over the outside of the White House right now, and it'd be the Trump house. Like, if he could.
Dan, I can't believe we didn't rename it the Gulf of Trump. Why?
Right.
We went Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. We just needed to take that extra step.
Yeah, but it feels like you have to actually, like Obamacare, they ended up kind of adopting the name because Republicans used it as sort of like a troll against against it, like it was a pejorative. Yeah. But they were like, you know what? We'll just take it, Obamacare. But better or worse, that was at least something that Obama created during his term. Like, the transit there in DC already exists, so just renaming it would be sort of like an honorary thing. It just feels like a troll to me at this point. And so for Stubbe, it's probably a win-win because it's kind of funny, and he is going to get, Trump's going to love that, right? So Trump will definitely remember this, and who knows how that'll help him in the future. So yeah, I don't think I would be highly surprised if you were there in DC, John, riding the Metro and riding the Trump train into work next year.
With Trump $100 bills in my pocket, getting, I got to be honest, it feels a little dear leaderish to me, but I get it. It's mostly a troll. It's fine. It depends on the level of seriousness these members of Congress have about it. I don't think it makes them look good necessarily. But if they don't care, okay. If their constituents like it, all right. It's not my cup of tea, but
more power to them, I guess. Yeah.
More power to them. Yep, exactly. Well, that'll do it for this edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. Lots to get to here this week, and always a pleasure, Dan, to have you on the show and to chat with us about what's been going on here in Washington, D.C. through this Trump 2.0 lens. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks very much.
All right. Thanks, John.